Jack's first steps onto Legalia were met with a barrage of silent, calculating stares. Dressed in a sharp, vibrant suit that starkly contrasted with the austere grays and structured forms of the Legalians' attire, he might as well have been a peacock strutting among pigeons. The alien air felt thick with judgment and a trace of mild shock. As he strode through the towering doors of the legal council building, the stark, angular architecture seemed to reflect the inhabitants' disposition, all sharp edges and cold efficiency. The interior was vast and imposing, with high ceilings that amplified the echo of his shoes clicking on the polished stone floor. "Mr. Jack Reynolds, I presume?" The voice came from a towering figure at the end of the hall. Zorix, the High Judge of Legalia, stood with a posture so rigid it made the surrounding columns appear slouched. His face was unreadable, his tone flat. "That's me. Honored to be here, Judge Zorix." Jack's voice carried effortlessly, his earthly charisma undampened by the stiff formalities. He extended a hand which hovered awkwardly in the air for a few seconds too long before Zorix, after a noticeable hesitation, accepted it. "You are aware, Mr. Reynolds, that our judicial system is quite unlike what you're accustomed to on Earth. I trust you are prepared?" Zorix's eyes, dark and penetrating, seemed to assess Jack for a role he may not yet fully grasp. "Absolutely," Jack replied, his smile unwavering. "I thrive on new challenges. I've done my homework, but I'm eager to learn more. Directly from the source, so to speak." Besides Zorix, a younger Legalian stepped forward. Her name was Lyra, a junior judge, and her demeanor carried a spark of curiosity absent in her superior. "We're quite interested to see how your Earth strategies will translate here," she said, her voice tinged with a hint of mischief that suggested she might enjoy the forthcoming disruptions Jack would inevitably bring. "Thank you, Judge Lyra. I hope to bring a fresh perspective, maybe shake things up a bit," Jack winked, undeterred by the weight of tradition that seemed to loom from the very walls of the legal council chambers. As they ushered him deeper into the heart of Legalian justice, Jack couldn't help but feel like a court jester stepping into a king's council. But he was here now, on a planet light years from home, ready to teach these aliens about human ingenuity, and perhaps learn a bit about their ways too. After all, on a planet ruled by law, who better than a lawyer to stir the waters of change? Jack's initiation into the world of Legalian law arrived swiftly and with a bewildering complexity that would have daunted lesser men. His first trial attendance was not as a participant, but as an observer, and the case on the docket seemed straightforward: a dispute over the correct execution of a contract between two local businesses. However, simplicity was merely a guise, as Jack soon discovered. The courtroom was a cavernous space, designed not for comfort, but to intimidate with its grandeur. Rows of officials in uniform, their robes inscribed with the meticulous script of Legalian law, filled the chamber. At the front, a tribunal of judges sat elevated above the rest, their expressions as unreadable as the ancient tomes that surrounded them. "Notice, Mr. Reynolds," whispered Lyra, leaning closer to Jack amid the sea of gray robes and serious faces, "how each party must present their case strictly in the form of traditional legal verse. It's a practice dating back centuries, meant to enforce clarity and precision." Jack watched, both fascinated and slightly horrified, as the plaintiffs recited their grievances in a rhythmic cadence, their lawyer occasionally interjecting with a chant like rebuttal. The defendants responded in kind, their own lawyer weaving counterpoints into a lyrical structure that Jack found both archaic and bizarre. "Doesn't this make the process longer than necessary?" Jack whispered back, his brow furrowed as he tried to follow the proceedings. "Indeed it does," Lyra replied, her lips twitching with a suppressed smile. "But tradition dictates our methods, and few dare to question the efficacy of ancient customs. Jack scribbled a note in his digital pad, his mind racing with thoughts of efficiency clashing with the spectacle before him. The case, which could have been settled with a simple review of contract documents and a basic mediation session, was being drawn out into hours of performative legality. As the trial dragged on, with no end in sight, Jack's restlessness grew. During a recess, he found himself in a brief, informal debate with a group of junior Legalians, all intrigued by his foreign perspective. Back on Earth, we often settle such matters out of court mediation, arbitration, sometimes even a handshake agreement, Jack explained, enjoying the small crowd that had gathered around him. A handshake? To settle legal disputes? One of the junior Legalians scoffed. How quaint! Jack grinned, undeterred. Quaint, but effective. Sometimes it's about finding common ground quickly and efficiently, without getting lost in the process. The idea seemed to resonate with some, drawing nods and murmured assents, while others looked skeptical. Lyra, who had been listening, added, "Perhaps Mr. Reynolds will show us some of these methods in action. It could prove enlightening." "Perhaps I will," Jack said, the wheels in his mind turning. "In fact, I have just the thing in mind to shake things up a bit." The session resumed, and Jack returned to his observation post, his brain teeming with ideas. Little did the assembled Legalians know, they were about to witness a small revolution in their judicial proceedings, all thanks to a simple game from Earth that Jack was more than eager to introduce. The stage was set, and Jack's debut as an agent of change was just moments away. Jack's opportunity to introduce his Earth-style conflict resolution came sooner than expected. During a particularly tedious post-lunch session, a minor but heated dispute erupted between two clerks over the correct filing of documents, an error that threatened to delay the proceedings even further. As the argument escalated, whispers and murmurs filled the courtroom, with everyone dreading the additional hours this trivial disagreement would add to their already long day. Jack, sensing the perfect moment for intervention, stood up, his voice cutting through the tension like a sharp knife. "Excuse me, if I may propose a quicker solution?" All eyes turned towards him, including those of the presiding judge, who nodded slightly, curiosity piqued. Jack gestured to the arguing clerks. "In Earth courts, we often use a simple game to resolve such standoffs. It's quick, fair, and believe it or not, fun. It's called rock, paper, scissors." A murmur of confusion swept through the courtroom. Lyra, ever the supporter of new ideas, stepped forward. "Show us, Mr. Reynolds. How does this game work?" Jack smiled and turned to the clerks. "It's simple. Each of you will choose one of three options at the same time: rock, paper, or scissors. Rock crushes scissors, scissors cut paper, and paper covers rock. Best out of three wins the argument. Are you willing to try?" The clerks looked at each other, their frustration from moments ago giving way to intrigue. With a shrug, they agreed, standing before the court to face each other. Jack quickly explained the rules again, emphasizing the fairness of the game. As the first round commenced, the clerks threw their signs, paper, and rock. A collective gasp filled the room when paper covered rock, and a small cheer erupted from some of the younger audience members. By the end of 3 rounds, one clerk had won decisively, and both seemed surprisingly satisfied with the outcome, shaking hands before returning to their seats. The room buzzed with energy, a stark contrast to the earlier, sleepier atmosphere. Zorix, the high judge, raised his hand for silence. "Mr. Reynolds, that was indeed quick and quite fascinating," Zorix admitted, his voice reflecting a rare hint of amusement. "Could such a method be applied to other minor disputes in our proceedings?" Jack nodded, eager to capitalize on his small victory. Absolutely, Judge Zorix. It's a way to cut through lengthy debates over small issues. It's not meant for major legal decisions, but it can certainly expedite the minor ones. Lyra chimed in, her eyes sparkling with excitement. Imagine the time we could save, the increase in court efficiency. It's an innovative blend of tradition and modernity. The courtroom broke into small groups, discussing the potential of Jack's proposal. Even the most traditional officials seemed to consider the idea, discussing its implications animatedly. Jack's simple game of rock, paper, scissors had done more than resolve a petty argument. It had planted the seeds of change in the fertile ground of curiosity and opened the door to new possibilities in the Legalians' rigid judicial system. The news of Jack's unconventional resolution method spread like wildfire across Legalia. Within days, what started as an amusing anecdote from the courtroom had escalated into a full-blown societal debate. The traditionalists were appalled, but a growing number of Legalians, particularly the younger generation, were intrigued by the potential of integrating rock, paper, scissors into their legal system. In a bustling cafe near the courthouse, Jack met with Lyra to discuss the whirlwind of attention his idea had garnered. Over steaming cups of the local brew, Lyra excitedly shared the latest developments. Jack, you've started something far bigger than you realize, Lyra began, her eyes alight with enthusiasm. Several lower courts are now requesting official permission to use rock, paper, scissors for procedural disputes. It's unprecedented. Jack smiled, sipping his drink. I thought it might catch on, but this is faster than I expected. How are the old guard taking it? Lyra's smile waned slightly. Not well. Judge Zorix and others are concerned about the sanctity of our processes being undermined. There's talk of a formal debate to discuss the legality and ethics of your method. A debate, huh? Sounds like just the platform we need to really sell this idea. Jack's response was optimistic, his mind already strategizing. The debate was scheduled swiftly, indicative of the urgency felt by the judiciary to address the growing divide. The venue was the grand auditorium of the legal council, an imposing space usually reserved for significant judicial conferences. On the day of the debate, the auditorium was packed, a buzz of anticipation hanging in the air. Jack, Lyra, and Zorix were among the key speakers. As Jack took the stage, his confident stride and calm demeanor contrasted sharply with the stiff formalities of the other participants. Ladies and gentlemen of Legalia, Jack began, his voice clear and carrying. I understand the concerns about maintaining the dignity and tradition of our legal system. But let's not confuse tradition with inefficiency. Rock, paper, scissors doesn't undermine our values. It enhances our ability to resolve simpler disputes quickly and fairly, allowing us to focus our energies on more complex cases. Zorix, ever the traditionalist, countered with a stern look. Mr. Reynolds, our legal system has served us well for centuries. To reduce our procedures to a child's game is to mock everything we stand for. How can we expect to maintain public respect for our judiciary if we resort to such trivialities? The audience murmured, some nods of agreement with Zorix mingling with skeptical looks. Jack responded, respect for the judiciary doesn't come from the complexity of our methods, but from our ability to deliver justice efficiently and fairly. If a simple game can resolve a dispute that would otherwise take hours or days of deliberation, isn't that a win for everyone? Lyra took the stage next, her support crucial as a respected member of the younger judicial faction. Consider the potential for reducing backlog in our courts, for increasing public satisfaction with our legal processes. This isn't about replacing all legal judgment with a game. It's about adapting our traditions to better meet the needs of today's Legalia. The debate raged on, with passionate arguments on both sides. However, the tide seemed to turn as more and more judges and legal professionals spoke in favor of at least trialing Jack's method in non-critical cases. By the end of the session, the Assembly voted to permit a 6-month trial period for rock, paper, scissors in resolving minor procedural issues. Jack's proposal, initially seen as a novelty, had sparked a revolution that might just reshape Legalian justice. As the crowd dispersed, Jack and Lyra exchanged relieved glances. "Well, that went better than I expected," Jack admitted. "Better than you expected?" "It was a resounding success," Lyra beamed. "Sometimes, all it takes is a little push to open a door to new possibilities." Indeed, as they left the auditorium, it was clear that Legalia's legal landscape was on the brink of significant change, all thanks to a simple Earth game introduced by a human lawyer who dared to challenge the status quo. The 6-month trial period of implementing rock, paper, scissors in Legalian courts had passed with surprising success. The system efficiently resolved numerous minor disputes, and public approval had soared. However, the ultimate test of Jack's innovation was yet to come: a high-profile case involving the ownership of a lucrative asteroid belt between two major corporate entities. The courtroom was packed, the air thick with tension and anticipation. News outlets from across the galaxy had their cameras trained on the scene, broadcasting what was being hailed as the trial of the millennium. Today, Jack's method faced its most significant challenge. Jack, sitting beside his client, a representative of the Helix Corporation, looked across the aisle at their opponent, the massive Zeta mining conglomerate. Next to him, Lyra whispered, "No matter how this ends, you've already changed our world, Jack." Jack gave a reassuring smile, though his usual confidence was tinged with nerves. "Let's hope it's for the better, Lyra." As the proceedings began, Judge Zorix took a moment to address the courtroom, his voice solemn. "Today's decision will not only determine the rightful ownership of the Andromeda asteroid belt, but also set a precedent for the future of our legal practices." In line with the recent reforms, and agreed upon by both parties, the final decision will be reached through rock, paper, scissors, as per Mr. Reynolds' proposal. The audience murmured, a mix of disbelief and excitement filling the room. Zorix continued, "This method, though unconventional, has been chosen for its ability to cut through prolonged legal deadlock. Let us proceed." Jack and the lawyer for Zeta Mining approached the bench. Each was solemn, aware of the gravity of the moment. They positioned themselves before the assembly, their hands ready at their sides. "On my count," Zorix directed. 1, 2, 3. The first round went to Jack's client, Helix Corporation, choosing paper over rock. A cheer erupted from one side of the room, quickly stifled by the gravity of the situation. The second round was Zeta's, their choice of scissors cutting Helix's paper. The score was even, and the tension nearly palpable. "Final round," announced Zorix, his voice steady, but not without a trace of disbelief at his own words. "Proceed." Jack's heart pounded as he watched the hands shoot out. Helix chose rock, Zeta chose scissors. A simple, childlike game had decided the fate of a resource worth trillions. The courtroom erupted into a cacophony of cheers and gasps. Jack's client had won, and with it, rock, paper, scissors had passed its most formidable test. As the crowd settled, Zorix made a closing statement. "Let this day be marked in our history as a turning point, where tradition met innovation on the field of honor. Congratulations to Helix Corporation and commendations to Mr. Reynolds for his role in this landmark case." After the trial, Jack and Lyra stood outside the courthouse, the stars above them seeming a little brighter. "You did it, Jack," Lyra said, her voice filled with admiration and awe. The story closed with Jack planning to establish a consultancy on Legalia, teaching other legal systems about the benefits of blending tradition with innovative practices, ensuring that the legacy of today's decision would resonate throughout the galaxy. In the months following the landmark trial, Jack's rock-paper-scissors method was officially adopted by the Legalian judiciary for certain types of cases. His unconventional approach, initially viewed with skepticism, had proven to be a catalyst for change, challenging long-held traditions and encouraging a more dynamic legal process. Jack established his consultancy right in the heart of Legalia's capital, becoming a bridge between the old guard and the new wave of legal professionals. His firm not only advised on integrating modern resolution methods into traditional practices, but also became a center for legal innovation, attracting interest from across the galaxy. As Jack watched young Legalians and visitors from other planets mingle in his new classroom, eager to learn about the synthesis of tradition and innovation, he felt a profound sense of accomplishment. They were not just learning to settle disputes, they were learning how to think differently, to be open to change, and to find common ground in the most unlikely ways. Reflecting on his journey, Jack realized that sometimes the simplest solutions could lead to the most significant changes, turning a mere game into a legacy of legal transformation. His story was a testament to the power of innovation and the endless possibilities that awaited those brave enough to challenge the status quo.